I need a facelift.
You do not. You're beautiful.
Stop.
So hard. Okay.
Oh shit, we got the giggles now. This
Okay,
ain't
no,
good.
we'll talk about our statistics next. Do you want to talk about that or
No, because I don't agree with it.
How can you not agree with the statistics? Welcome to our next podcast. I'm Cassie and this is
Vanessa.
And today we're going to be talking all about normalizing career changes throughout any stage of your life. So recently I have gone through a career change from being a teacher, and I'm trying to figure out where my next, true path lies. So I'm kind of dabbling in a few different things like online marketing and just really researching to see where my next career that has meaning and fulfillment will come from. So I'll kind of talk about my story, and Vanessa will deep dive into her story as well. So what are you currently transitioning from?
The healthcare, from home care into just doing like office admin job. Right now I'm a florist, which I've been for a while, on and off, which I really enjoy, but I just want like a lazy desk job, which I guess I should say lazy, but
peaceful. I like the word peaceful.
Yeah, I'm like, oh my God, am I going to piss people off?
No, you're not.
Okay.
I also want something peaceful in my life.
Yeah, which I'm sure every job is not peaceful to some degree. But anyways, from home care, which I was getting sick of the politics, when I'm sure teaching is the same thing.
Yeah.
But
they're very similar. And so we'll kind of talk to you guys a little bit about our story. And we just kind of want to bring up the point that statistically, that there are different ranges that people have stayed in their career. So baby boomers, so that would be kind of our parents, and then beyond that, they statistically speaking, if you were a baby boomer, you would typically, on average, stay with your job for up to 10 to 12 years. If you were a Gen X, it would be about 3.4 years, whatever that average is. And if you were Gen Y, 2.7 years. So I know for myself, there's a lot of guilt when I was transitioning out of teaching. And especially because I was one of the first people to actually go to university and to get a bachelor's degree in my family. So I had a lot of members of my family who had, done the trades and things like that. But it was really special to be able to be that first person to get that bachelor's degree, to stand up on stage and to go through that with all of those accolades and things. So there's a lot of pressure when you had, my parents supported me through that. They were really lovely, and they helped me to pay for some of my schooling, along with the loans that I paid for myself. But I definitely had a lot of support. So then there's a lot of guilt that goes into that when, you fast forward 12, 13 years and you've like devoted that much time. And especially when it's a career like teaching, you feel like there's always these nuanced ideas that you have to do it for the children. And if you're leaving teaching, you're giving, you're giving up on the kids, and you're giving up on a new generation, and you're not doing something for somebody else. But we talked a little bit about the politics earlier, and in teaching, there's so much negativity going on. There's the government in Alberta has just made such a disaster of education. There's a lack of funding. There is not enough supports for the students in the classroom. So I had a grade 4-5 split last year, and it's normal to have up to 35 kids into a class. And I only had, I think when I left, 28 or 29 kids, and that rose by the end of the year up to, I believe, 30. So
that's a lot of kids.
That's a lot of kids, especially in a split class. So when I was teaching split classes in BC, I think the most I had was maybe 22, 23. So to go from that dynamic to this being the new norm, like you're not meeting everybody's needs, and you don't have enough time in your day to be everybody's everything. And you have kids in there who have a wide range of issues, right? Like there's so many issues going on in the classroom. You have like across my span of my career, children who have had autism, hearing issues, ADHD, ADD, a variety of just concoctions of life events that have caused them to not be able to regulate in a classroom with smaller class sizes, let alone a classroom that has 30 some kids in it. How do I, as an adult, teach these kids when I can't focus because of some of the dysregulation that's going on, because these kids actually aren't getting the medication they need, or they don't have the supports, or they don't have somebody there to take them for the walks that they need when they need it in order to regulate. And I'm sorry, I can't also teach and be in the hallway supporting every single student at the same time.
Yeah.
So it's just unrealistic to put so much onto a teacher. And then people say, well, you have an EA. But your EA is not in there all the time, and often if they are with a certain student, right? Mm-hmm. And so then their attention is supposed to be directed to that student. And often what happens is, because there's so many needs in the classroom, either A, they don't get to fully give their attention to the student that they're supposed to, or B, they are like spread so thin across the room that it's just like it's just crazy how much pressure is put on teachers, mm-hmm. and how much pressure is to stay when you're getting burnt out and you're tired and you're feeling like you're never doing enough, when it's the system itself that's set up in a way that doesn't support the students, in a way that doesn't support the EAs, and in a way that definitely doesn't support the teachers. And it's not your admin's fault. They're trying the best they can within a system, and the school boards, but if there's not enough funding from the government, then it trickles down and it gets to the point where all of that falls onto the teacher's shoulders, because they're the public face, right?
Yeah.
And I know that you talked about career changes happening within AHS is kind of tricky because of the politics too. So can you speak to that a little bit?
I can. Well, with home care, I left because, so I'll just kind of explain it. There's a lot of gray area in home care. So there's a lot of like, you can do this, but you can't do that. You can be friendly, but don't be too friendly where they really fully trust you. Give them the care they need, but don't give them more care than what's in their care plan. So do this, but don't do that. So there was a lot of gray area, as they called it. So like being friendly, get them to really feel comfortable with you because you're doing a lot of intimate stuff with them. I don't know if intimate's the right word, but they're vulnerable around you, so they feel like they have to really trust you, and they do. But you don't want to be open with them. So it's like a lot of like, I don't know, you want to build these relationships with these people, but you're not supposed to really build these relationships with these people. And you get really close to a lot of your clients and your patients. And then when they pass, it's like you're just supposed to be, okay,
it's almost like
go back to work. Or if you find them deceased, continue on with work, right?
Yeah, it's almost like they're taking the human nature out of your role, which is kind of like in teaching too. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So they take that. So I had a position. So I had a line, which is like a full-time, not really full-time, but you have like, you're in the system. Or you can go casual. I wanted to go back to casual because I was planning on going back to school just to get my office admin and that stuff. And because of my tumor and other stuff, I wanted to go casual. And because of my tumor, they told me they wouldn't hire me as casual, but to keep my position, which makes no sense. They wanted me to keep my line where I was working normal, right? I had my schedule, my shifts, but when I wanted to go casual so that I could pick up and work when I could work, and if I wasn't in too much pain, but yet they told me to no, because they wouldn't hire me on as casual, even though I was already in the system, like I was already with AHS, because of my health issues, because of my tumor. Which
it makes zero sense. It's because they didn't want to go through the paperwork hassle.
Before they even hired me on as a 0.5, I told them I have a tumor in my spleen. We're figuring it out. I have to go for checkups, all this stuff. And they knew. They hired me on. And then later when I was like, can I be casual? Then I can pick up. I don't have to let people down if I can't come in type deal. It's just easier. And they're like, no, we can't hire you on if you have health issues. And I did talk to HR, and they even said, no, they can't do that. They're not allowed to, but at that point I was like, I'm done. This whole fucking system is a shit show. You can't even give the proper care that you want to these people without, your hand being slapped.
Well, and let's think about those two professions. So both professions where they're high, like there's a lot of women that go into these professions, not just women, there's men too, but the majority of people within that I am in my field are mostly women, unless you get into higher, the higher grades, but definitely in the elementary, you see a majority of women, and within your career too, there's a lot of women. And so I do think that factors in, and unfortunately, I do think that does factor in, because if it was a male driven career, it probably would look different when it came to things like this, right?
I feel like they have more of a voice,
right? And I think we're getting better about advocating for those types of things, but I do think that's part of the issue is like, and then when you are in a career where you're expected to give, there's not a lot of leeway. When you come to, people who are in HR, it's usually they're really good with things like that, but the people who are just above you often kind of, what is the word, gaslight you a little bit, maybe not intentionally, but I felt definitely that there was a lot of gaslighting within the teaching profession where
they belittle you almost.
Where it's like if you're bringing up a concern, everybody else within that entire profession is going through the same thing. So it's almost like if you say anything about your concerns or what your struggles are, then what's going to happen is other people are just going to look at you like, we're all in this together. Like I suffer, we all suffer together, but it doesn't mean that it's right. And so that gaslighting where it's like, well, you just give and give and give of yourself, especially in your career too, like with a tumor where you could like, die essentially if you were to rupture your tumor doing the things you did, right?
Yeah.
And did they give you that concern or that?
No, my coworkers were amazing. Like if you feel like you need, but then I'm like, I don't want to be, because there's situations where it's like, you can't control what the outcome is. You can be helping somebody and they can trip and fall and their instinct is to grab onto something near them and it's you. So they're going to grab onto you. A lot of them fall and you want to help them up and you're not loud.
Yeah. So
it was like a lot of, but I did have my supervisor, not my supervisor, but the case manager. No, I don't. Yeah. The case manager, tell me like, well, your job isn't hard. You can kind of like predict what's going to happen. It's like, how are you going to predict when somebody's coming out of the shower and they slip and they grab onto you?
Yeah.
You can't predict that that's going to happen. You can't predict that somebody's going to trip. And like, it's hard. Your natural instinct is to catch, especially older person or somebody that's like has disabilities, to catch them and help them and make sure they don't get hurt. And you're just supposed to let them fall.
Yeah, no.
Which we don't want to hurt ourselves either. But it's hard to not like just automatically try to help. So that was what I was scared of, was having something jarring motion and having that happen. But so and the people above you, some of them are amazing. And then some of them are like, go to physio. What the fuck is physio going to do for a tumor? But sure.
Well, and I think too, like for me, it was more of like the hormonal health and the mental health issues, but that was all compounded by the amount of stress. And I don't think, like, I've been in teaching, I don't even remember what year that would have been. So if I were to go back this year, I think it would have been my 13th year, but I could be wrong, just off the top of my head. So quite a while in the teaching profession. And I have seen what it was like to start out. And it was a very lovely profession when I first started. But even back then, it was still stressful. And as I've continued to teach, it's gotten worse and worse and worse.
Well, I feel like, and then you have your kids, you start a family. Yeah.
And you want to devote more mental space and then just presence to them. But it just seems like the profession was taking more and more away from my mental health, my physical health, and my ability to just be a good and a present mom. And so even through all of that, and it sounds like you went through a lot too, people were still telling me, well, just take a pill. We all take pills. Just take an anxiety pill. Yeah. Just take this. But it's not, and it is great, do those things for yourself. But that's not let that be the message that we're not going to change anything in the education field or in the healthcare field because it's so normalized to just have to take antidepressants and have to take anxiety pills because of the career you're in.
It's just burnout.
Right? It's burnout.
It's a burnout career.
Yeah. And I've got a friend who's in nursing. It's very similar. So those types of careers where you're giving so much of yourself and then people look at you negatively, not everybody, but there's always judgment no matter what, but they look at you negatively when you leave those careers because it's almost like there's this silent agreement that when you go into a career where you're giving to others, that when you're leaving it, you're doing someone a disservice or you're not. I don't know. It feels strange. So I always relate it to like, say if we were in an office position or if I were cleaning homes or something like that, would I have that same guilt to have a career change? And I think we need to normalize.
I feel like because we are middle-aged, that people look at us like, no, you should still, you should be settled. You should have a job. So I feel like it's our age. And I'm lucky that I have a very stable husband so that I am a little more unstable. But it definitely is, I feel like it's the age thing. I feel like people look at us like, why don't you have your shit together?
Well, and that's a good point that you brought up about like having that stability at home. So my husband has a job now where unfortunately he works away, but it's like the financial aspect of things is very stable. So that allowed me to have this ability to kind of figure out what it is that I want to do. But not everybody can do that. I think of a lot of the single moms that I know who would desperately want to leave the education profession because they're burnt out and they can't focus on their kids or their health. And they're looking for a change, but it's scary. And like when we don't normalize career change, especially in those professions where you're giving and giving and giving, it's an extra layer of anxiety and stress because then you feel like not only are you letting down your family financially, but you're letting down, I don't know, my, and I know he wouldn't think this, but you feel like you're letting down your father who helped you with your 4 years of schooling and all that time you devoted to learning a craft and becoming really good at it and putting all of that heart and soul into something only to walk away from it. It's scary, right? And it does feel overwhelming, but I think that we need to have these conversations so that we can show that it's okay to get to a certain stage in your life or to just even if you put 4 years into something or 2 years or whatever it is, if it's a trade, and it's not serving you and it's actually taking away from your quality of life, which I know it was for both of us. Right. And if that's not something that is serving you, then it's okay to walk away from it and to just allow yourself the process of discovering what is for you. And maybe that means if you can't afford to just take a little bit of time over the summer or throughout the year, getting a job that is just a for now job, right? We always feel this pressure to go from one job that we love and that we are passionate about into another job that's equally as amazing. But you could also just find something for now. Like you talked about going into and doing your floral arrangements and things like that while you're going back to school, right?
Yeah, so, I'll be a florist again and do that. I do really enjoy that, but I can't see that being my end all. Right?
Yeah. So, and that's something that I think is really cool is giving yourself the space to do something that maybe isn't your forever, just as a way to allow yourself, a little bit of financial income, but then also the flexibility to not be so stressed out by your 9 to 5 that you can't actually function.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, I hope that I guess some people take this to heart and know that it's okay. It's just because we're in our 40s. 30s, 20s, whatever age you are,
late 30s,
that it's okay to like want to go back to school, to start over, to try something new. You're not dead yet. Why not?
And I've heard so many beautiful stories about women who are in their 50s or their 60s or you know what I mean? And they're still rediscovering who they are and rediscovering what their passions are and just trying things on for size. And if it doesn't fit, like allowing yourself that grace to figure out what does fit. Yeah. And I think,
and fuck the people that try to get into your head, like, what are you talking about? You're this age. Why would you just try something else now?
Look at the statistics, like, you know, baby
statistics.
We were having this conversation earlier. So the statistics are telling us that it is very normal across the board, but sometimes as women, we just don't give ourselves permission to put ourselves first or our own needs first.
Yeah.
So hopefully that this conversation helps to normalize career changes and normalize putting your own needs and your own health and your mental wellness first.
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining us, you guys. And we hope you listen to the next one. And we are on Spotify, YouTube, and we have TikToks with little sneak peeks if you don't want to watch the whole thing and you just kind of want to get an idea of what we're talking about.